Well, hello again. This is Buck Benny speaking. We have another episode of the Jack Benny Show for us. We won't go all through our introductions. We did that earlier, rather than to say that I've got Kathy Fuller Seeley and I've got John Henderson and I've got Terry Phillips here. And we are here to talk about Jack Soo appearing on the Jack Benny Show. And I wanted to do this one. I thought reading and getting to know a little more about Jack Soo, Jack Soo, I've always had a special place in my heart for, because I was a big fan of his on the Barney Miller Show, and I used to watch that with my dad. We'd watch the Barney Miller Show, and I remember it really affected me when he died, and that he died during the filming of the show. I think it was in like the third or fourth season. It wasn't too far into the run, and they did a wonderful little tribute show for him. I tried to find it on YouTube, but I didn't see it out there on YouTube that the tribute episode was there. It was just kind of a clip show that they put together. They were talking. I listened to Hal Linden, who played Barney Miller. He's part of the American Film Institute or something. They have these interviews that they do with older performers to talk about their history, and there's a little section in there that's on YouTube that he talks about Jack Soo, and then he talks about the tribute show and how the writers, they all got together and they were talking about, should they write a special episode like saying goodbye to him and that sort of thing, and the actors didn't even know if they could pull it off to really do something like that without getting too emotionally upset and everything. And they decided, well, let's just do a clip show, because there's so many great clips of him, and so they decided to honor him that way. And I think that was a great way to do it, because he had these little bit parts, and it was usually about the coffee and how bad the coffee was. But seeing him in this episode and the way he comes across in this episode is so bad in so many ways, as far as the way it treats other cultures and things, and we'll get into that as we go. But as I'm often saying, I almost rather that they do it bad than don't do it at all. I think giving these actors a chance to act and a chance to be in something. I mean, for Jack Soo, this was probably one of the biggest things he was ever in, was the Jack Benny Show. So, and he does a brilliant job, and it undercuts all of the stuff that's wrong with this episode. The Jack Soo part undercuts that in such a beautiful way that it makes it worthwhile to me. But anyway, let's go around the horn here and go with Kathy. What were your thoughts on this episode?
Well, I appreciated seeing it, but yes, kind of cringeworthy. But I totally agree with you, Daryl, that Jack Soo's marvelously hip character blows the stereotypes out of the water, and was really delightful. He really made the most of that small part. So yes, I appreciated that a lot. So
and I just love. I mean, Jack does such a good job of almost being in this episode like what is it, Steve Carell, the actor that was on The Office, that just makes you feel so uncomfortable so much of the time in his comedy. That's what Jack was essentially doing, was pushing this so far over the edge with his bad stereotypes that it just gave Jack Soo this chance to just come under it and just blow it away. Yeah. And and I love that he referred to Jack as who was it, the detective series in the 40s and 50s. Charlie Chan. He refers to him as, if you're done doing your Charlie Chan impersonation or whatever it was, and I thought it was great. John, what were your sort of thought? What stood out to you on this one?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I just recently listened to an episode where Jack Benny does Charlie Chan, right? And of course, Charlie Chan is a film series where it's, a white guy playing a Chinese detective with extreme stereotypes, which is where you get the things that Jack is saying, like, oh, honorable, whoever, whatever, those sorts of stereotypes. So in the episode where Jack Benny's playing Charlie Chan, you thought this was cringeworthy. That is like to the max. Like, that's the joke. Like it's about as much stereotype, language as they can think of, all jumbled in there. So it was
John,
interesting to
John,
see
have
this,
you,
which is
sorry, John, have you heard any of the Fred Allens where he does one long pan? It was an ongoing bit that he would do that was a take on Charlie Chan. And man, they are funny, but man, they're really inappropriate too. It's like, oh man. But
yeah, and you know,
the big thing is you can't ever say revolver. It's always revolver. Where's the revolver?
Right.
He killed him with the revolver, and they're like, you know, it shouldn't be so funny, but it is. Anyway, go ahead, John.
Well, that's why I find it interesting to see like how that sort of slowly shifted, because we've got the sort of extreme stereotypes in like the 30s and 40s. And then by, you know, the Saturday morning cartoons that I watch by the 60s, they've got some of those stereotypes, but they're not as malicious, I think, in a way. They're not as extreme. And this is sort of like the transition point. And I feel like this thing where he's doing those, and then the guy comes back with like the beatnik type lingo is so funny. And I think it's sort of a commentary on that, sort of making that transition from, you know, the stereotypes to like, hey, there's lots of people who have now grown up in the United States, even if they are, you know, from Chinese or Japanese descent. And that's the other thing. Charlie Chan is, you know, a Chinese stereotype, and, you know, Jack Soo is Japanese, but it seemed like it doesn't really matter. It's all one thing to
Right. And that's a whole thing that we'll get into here. I don't know if Terry's going to take us there or not, or we'll see, but about Jack Soo and how he got his name and all of that. So we'll flip it over to Terry. Terry, what are your thoughts?
Well, Daryl, I did record and saved, and last night watched the Barney Miller tribute to Jack.
Oh,
okay. It was very touching. And as you started to mention, when Hal Linden was interviewed, he told the story of Danny Arnold, who was close friends with Jack Soo. They had worked together in the early days. Danny Arnold, the creator of Barney Miller, had been a stand-up comic, and Jack Soo worked in the nightclub circuit as a singer. And so when he hired him to play Yamada on Barney Miller, they were already very good and longtime friends. And Danny Arnold decided they would not, as he put it, trade on his death by writing the character out of the show. Instead, they just asked all of the actors on their own to write something in preparation for this tribute, which they did. And as Hal Linden, who played Barney Miller, tells the story, Jack Soo was born Goro Suzuki. He was born in 1917, and I read that he was born on a ship in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
He changed his name to Jack Soo in order to, he had done it early in his career. And then he did it in part to get a job in a Chinese nightclub, and they didn't want a Japanese, a performer with a Japanese name. So he picked the same name that he had used previously, Jack Soo. In one of the clips,
I'd read that he went to Jack Soo as well because Chinese were looked at in a better light than Japanese because of the World War II situation and everything.
Right. Yeah. Right. It wouldn't have been a great career move after the Second World War to have a name like Goro Suzuki. And in one of the clips in that Barney Miller tribute, there's a scene where Jack Soo's character, Yamada, is talking to a psychiatrist who's interviewing all the squad members. And he says to him as he's getting ready to leave, he said, you know, I'm not Chinese. And he says, it doesn't matter. The psychiatrist says it doesn't matter. And Jack Soo's character says, well, maybe not now. The other Japanese character, and I think she actually was born in Japan, actually she was born in Korea, but she was Japanese, was the singer Romi Yamada, who was also in Flower Drum Song. And by the way, Flower Drum Song was Jack Soo's big break in show business in 1958. She was also in that show. And she was also very, very funny, just a terrific performance. At one point, I think Jack Soo is negotiating with Jack Benny, and he says to him, want to buy an American transistor. And for those who are not old enough, Japanese transistor radios were a big deal in the 1950s, and so he was doing a turn on that. Something almost got cut or got slightly cut in one of the transitions between scenes in this episode. Jack is telling a joke about being in a casino, and I won't give it away, but what almost gets cut is where he says, and I'm insured for that. So when you watch this episode, listen to the casino joke, and you'll kind of hear Jack say at the end, and I'm insured for that.
Well, and just so you know, I mean, I have my own copy of this, and that's not on YouTube. And so I'll play with mine and see if I can get it cut better. I think they might have cut too much. They tried to cut a commercial out or something, and they cut part of it.
That might have been it.
So I might be able to fix that. We'll see.
Okay. The last note I have is about the sketch they do at the end where Jack Soo is playing a Japanese version of Ed Sullivan. Instead of calling it the Ed Sullivan Show, they call it the Ed Surabachi Show. And they have these kids on who I think we're supposed to believe are Japanese. They call themselves the Rocky Fellers.
Yep.
They're actually Filipino. And it was four brothers and their father.
Wow.
And they covered Elvis Presley's Have Some Fun Tonight. They did a few other things. They were obviously a novelty act. And then Jack comes out and joins them. Very, very funny. I realized as I was watching this, I did the math, and Jack Benny was at that time my age, my current age. And he did a little bit of a pratfall. And I'm thinking to myself, would I have done that? Oh, I don't know. But he did.
Yeah.
That's all I've got. It was really, really good. Thank you for sharing.
I was just going to say, as far as pratfalls and Jack goes, the only time I've heard Jack talk about that or that come up was when he was doing the Lucy show, and they did this show that was about the life of Jack Benny, which was a strange thing to do on the Lucy show. It's a really good episode. We'll have to present it here at some point, but they asked him to do a lot physical comedy and things in that. And there were times when he had to say to them, I can't do that. I can't, they'll say, just come over and jump over this table and then do this thing. And he's like, I can't jump over that table. It's not going to happen. So they had to kind of tone it down for what he was capable of. And some of it, he did stuff that he probably shouldn't have done. He was pushing, because the guy was close to 80 at that point, and trying to get him to do physical comedy was probably not the best thing to do. But anyway, that's you would assume Jack had to deal with that as he was getting older. I guess the thing that we talk about the most with getting older and changes and things, tying into Kathy's Beatles thing that she has there in the background. The Beatles are on this week. They're on Disney Plus with their Get Back wonderful series that they have. But as we talk about getting older, certainly people talk about Paul McCartney and his voice that's steadily going, and that's unfortunate things for him. I'm just glad that he keeps on. If you listen to his later albums, he adjusts, and they become more. He leans more into the music, and he can't lean on his voice as much. Where, of course, in the 70s, he can completely have a very sparse written song, and his voice would carry it, and so you could do amazing things. He has to have the songs really tightly well written, so that his voice and written in a way that his voice can do the notes and the whole thing. So I think that's great how Paul's adapting to that. And I think Jack did the same thing. As he was younger, he could do things a little differently than when he got older, but he did a great job adapting. So you never really noticed it. You would just kind of go with it. And I think that's what great performers do. They kind of adapt as they get older. So anyway.
Yeah, in some ways, I think the stiffness that Jack has, the fact that he's not, loose and a physical comedian, in some ways he makes it work in his physicality. So like when he's coming out, the kids are doing their Elvis moves, Long Tall Sally, and then he's coming out and he's just a little awkward. So that makes him stand out. And it is funny. And Yeah, so I thought that was funny. I loved the Ed Sullivan spoof because I love watching those old Ed Sullivan shows and how Jack Soo's doing the mannerisms of Ed Sullivan.
I mean, Jack Soo is the cornerstone of this episode. He is so good in this. And every moment he's on screen, you just want to go, oh, wow, he's great. And so I just really enjoyed him.
I didn't know what to expect. I knew nothing. I hadn't looked up anything before I started watching, and I really was wondering, Japanese agent, is this a kind of James Bond parody, or is it going to be, like foreign agent, secret agent? I wasn't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to forget about my favorite part of the whole episode, which is the Mel Blanc boom mic part.
Oh yes. That's a great bit. That is.
I won't spoil it too much, but it's just so funny. I love it.
You put Mel and Jack together and write them any sort of bit, and they just totally shine. And they shine in that. There's so many pieces in this that are definitely worth watching. And when you start cringing at it, just keep going. It gets better. So there's payoff to it. The other thing I can't let us go without saying is, unfortunately, in the Hollywood industry, and Asians have gotten shortchanged for decades and decades and decades. Things are starting to get better, it seems like, and that's great. But at this time frame in the early 60s, I can't think of a show that they were on where there was an Asian portrayal in a positive way. Almost every time you'd see them, it'd be a World War II reference, whatever it was, or a complete over-the-top comedy sort of performance on their part.
The one I can think of would be Sulu in Star Trek. That's probably the best example.
Yeah.
That's where I was just going, John. Thanks for stealing my
Oh, sorry about that.
No, what I was going to say was, so then in 66, right, John, we all of a sudden get Sulu, who was, at the time, I mean, I watched it. There's Sulu. I just accept him, and he's part of my entertainment value for the week, and you enjoy it. But you don't realize what a big deal that was to have an Asian performer played as just a member of the ship, where their being Asian wasn't the biggest thing about that character. It was just another just showing, which Gene Roddenberry did such a good job of saying, there's going to be Black people on our ship, there's going to be Asian people on our ship, there's going to be aliens on our ship. And they're just there, and they're part of the crew, and it's not questioned that they're there, and it's not, oh, look at how progressive we are, right? It's nothing like that. And that was wonderful, and it's existed in the Star Trek universe ever since. I mean, they've had great diverse casts over the years, and they continue to. And I think that's a thing that's not sung that often about Star Trek that probably should be. And then, of course, now there's lots of series that feature lots of folks, and certainly after Star Trek Hawaii Five-0 and some of the work that they did, started to have more and more Asian actors brought in, and actors, lots of actors of color that were brought in to do things, and things, like I say, have gotten better. But back in the 50s and early 60s, you just never saw them. And so I think this was a gutsy call for Jack to do. Certainly he was getting somebody who had broken through already, right? You talk about he had I don't know if it was on Broadway, but he had a show that he's in and a movie that had recently come out. So they talk about both those things in here. But Jack Soo did a great job of bringing it in too.
Oh, I would just reminded me of, there's an episode of The Twilight Zone that also stars George Takei, where basically on both sides of World War II, the soldiers switch places in the Twilight Zone manner, and so while the one guy had been prejudiced against the Japanese, now suddenly he was a Japanese person. But it's interesting because in this episode they also reference the Twilight Zone. So, I guess it was contemporary. I guess 1962. It makes sense. Yeah.
Well, that and what episode of the Twilight Zone was banned for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades? It was that one. So,
oh, really? I didn't.
So
know
that was unseen. I didn't see it. I watched Twilight Zone my whole time growing up. Never could see that episode. I think it was aired once on one of their anniversary sort of shows they did in the 80s or something, and I didn't get a chance to watch it then. So I've watched it on Netflix now. It's on there. It's on any of the packages. It's in everything now, which is great. But and I can't remember 100% even why it was banned. There was like 3 episodes that were banned, 2 or 3. One of them, the one with little miniatures with Robert Duvall.
In the
dollhouse thing.
Twilight Zone companion, I think it said something about a combination of pressure from Asian American groups and the fact that it was kind of violent. I mean, for a Twilight Zone episode, it was violent. But I think it had more to do with the political pushback from Asian Americans who didn't like the way
he was portrayed.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I can see it. I mean, it certainly is a strong portrayal that he does and everything, and I could see them have issues with it. It's just too bad for the actor that he didn't get seen in Twilight Zone for decades and decades and decades. But now it's kind of a cool episode that people watch and are like, oh, I've never seen this one before. So there you go. But yeah, the history of that is interesting in its own. But I guess we'll leave it there. I hope you folks enjoy this wonderful Jack Soo performance on Jack Benny, and the performances of everybody on here is just fantastic, and lots of interesting people to see, and a chance to see the Rockefellers rock out. And they did have a hit song at some point and so forth. So I mean, they weren't just a small time group, but they were around for a bit in the 60s. So anyway, we'll leave it at that. And thanks everybody, and we'll see you next time.
From Hollywood, the Jack Benny Program.
Thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Now, tonight, for... What? Oh, for heaven's sake. I forgot to pull down my pants when I got off my bicycle. Oh, gee. Now, this is... It's not really what you think. I don't ride a bicycle to the studio just to save on gas. See? I just happen to think that it's good exercise. Now, you take in Europe, nearly everybody rides a bicycle and nobody thinks anything of it. But here, I don't know, everybody stares at me. I guess maybe it's because mine has 3 wheels. But bicycle riding is really good for you. It's wonderful exercise. Now, I knew a man in Beverly Hills, 92 years old. Imagine, 92 years old, who never went anywhere in a car, always on a bicycle. And his legs were so developed, see, that, well, you won't believe this, but 3 weeks ago he died, and they have to keep postponing the services until they catch him. Tonight, when you drive home, if you happen to see an old man riding a bicycle with his arms folded, he is not showing off. But getting back to exercise, I don't think that people do enough of it. Really, they don't take advantage of the... What is this, anyway? Hey. Hey, fella.
Huh?
What? I was right in the middle of my monologue, and you dropped the mic in my face.
I did? Oh, I'm sorry. I must have dozed off.
Dozed off?
Oh, boy, what a night I had last night.
Well, look, that's not my problem. Now, sleep on your own time.
On my own time? How can I sleep with a kid of mine yelling and screaming at 3 o'clock in the morning? I'd walk that kid up and down, up and down, up and down. And my wife, she doesn't hear this. She's sound asleep.
Look, I'm not interested in your wife.
Well, neither am I. But you can't break up a home just because your wife can wear the same shoes that you do.
I don't care.
They're a little tight, but she gets them on.
Look, don't tell me your problems. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a comedian.
Well, you could have fooled me.
Never mind that. Now cut that out and just tend to your business. And stay awake.
Okay. You know, I fell asleep here last week, too.
What are you talking about? You weren't even working here last week.
I know. I was in the audience.
Now stop the whole business. Just do what you're supposed to do.
Okay.
I don't know how I ever get a show on with all the troubles I go through. Anyway, I'm not going to let that upset me tonight because, ladies and gentlemen, we have a real good show for you. And I'm going to introduce a young lady I know you'll be very happy to meet. She's from Japan, only been in this country a short time. And she's already starred in the international company of Flower Drum Song. And she's very cute and very talented. And right now she's going to sing a song for us. So here she is, Miss Romi Yamada. Romi, come out here, would you please? I want to tell you that you sang that song just beautifully.
Thank you.
You know, it must be exciting being in the United States for the first time.
Oh, yes, very exciting. Especially now that I'm making my first appearance on television.
Yeah, this is your first appearance, and I'm thrilled about it, too, being on my show. Well, tell me, are you enjoying your visit here in Los Angeles?
Oh, yes, very much. Meeting nice people and seeing many interesting places of city. And had especially good time yesterday when at your house.
At my house yesterday? You were at my house when?
At noontime?
You were at my house at noon?
Yes, that is where sightseeing bus stop to let passengers buy lunch.
yes, I'm sorry. I didn't recognize you.
Mr. Benny, may I ask a question?
Want to ask me a question? Yes, go ahead.
Are you part Japanese?
What'd you say?
Are you part Japanese?
Well, I'm about as Japanese as Barry Goldwater. I mean, why do you ask?
Well, yesterday I noticed when bus passengers come in house, must observe Japanese custom of taking shoes off.
Oh, yes, I do make the customers that come in and take their shoes off. I got that idea when I was in Tokyo. You know.
But why is it some people coming out do not get shoes back?
Because some people not pay check. But, Romy, I'm certainly glad that you're enjoying your visit here in America, because I always had such a good time when I was in Tokyo.
Oh, you're very popular in Tokyo.
Oh, yeah, my television shows are there, aren't they?
Yes.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
In fact, you're my father's favorite comedian.
Your father's favorite comedian? Isn't that nice? Your father likes me, huh?
Yes, but he's very worried about you.
Your father's worried about me?
Yes, he said if you're only 39, you're a very sick man.
What are you laughing at? Well, listen. You thank your father for me, but tell him that I'm in great shape, not to worry. And by the way, Romy, I enjoyed your song so much that I'd like to have you on my show again, you see? Now, how much money would you want to appear regularly on my show?
Well, how much to ask for, I do not know. Not very familiar with American money.
Oh, you're not familiar with American money, huh? Well, we ought to be able to make a very nice deal, then.
For such matters, have agent.
Oh, you have an agent?
Yes, and fortunately, he accompanied me from Japan, and he's backstage now.
Oh, your agent is backstage? Well, bring him out. I'd like to talk to him.
All right.
Okay. Imagine a Japanese agent. Well, I hate to take advantage of him, but business is business.
Mr. Benny would like to introduce Honorable Agent.
Oh. It is indeed great pleasure to meet young lady's honorable representative. And this humble person would like to point out that association with Big Star will help her career. So financial reward at this time, not important. Or how they say it in Japan.
I don't know how they say it in Japan, but just between us, put something in the pot, boy, you ain't got her.
Put something in the pot?
Something green, and I don't mean pea pods.
Wait a minute. Are you really her agent?
I'm not Barry Goldwater.
Romy, cannot understand. When you mention agent, was under impression that honorable representative...
I'm here to talk business, and this guy makes like Charlie Chan.
Perhaps Mr. Benny confused, because I tell him you come back with me from Japan.
Yes, you came back from Tokyo.
I did. I won a 2-week trip on a quiz show. Look, Dad, now that we got you out of the Twilight Zone, let's talk business.
Well, I'd like to give her a standard contract, you know, that I give to all of the people that come on my show. For instance, it starts out, they get $35 a show.
$35? I wouldn't let her do a bar mitzvah for that.
$45?
Are you kidding? They pay more in the Peace Corps.
We'll leave stage now. It's not nice for women to be around when honorable gentlemen discuss business. Keep up pressure.
I'm sure we can get together on money, and I do want Romi on my show again, you see. So here, I have a contract right here.
You didn't have to print in Japanese.
That's the way all my contracts are written. You know, it works out better than fine print. You can't afford to miss this opportunity. I mean, when she gets to Japan, what chance will she have? How many comedians are there in Japan like me?
Hundreds of them.
Hundreds of comedians like me?
One working. Now, look, Mr. Benny, we're not getting any place. If you're still interested in Miss Yamada, just call this number. Ask for Jack Soo.
Jack Soo?
That's me.
Hey, wait a minute. Your face is familiar. Aren't you the fella that's in the picture Flower Drum Song? You play the part of Sammy Fun?
That's right.
I thought so. Yeah, certainly. Then why have you been kidding me about this agent business?
I'm not kidding. I just got a few sidelines going for me.
Sidelines?
Yeah, want to buy an American transistor?
No, I don't. But I want to tell you that I also saw you in Flower Drum Song in the show in Las Vegas. A great show, and you were wonderful.
Thank you very much. But there's one thing I can't understand. Flower Drum Song is a happy show. And when I saw you, you had tears in your eyes.
Oh, well, I just came in from the gambling casino. I hate to see other people lose.
And you don't gamble yourself?
No, I don't.
Well, you're very wise, because a lot of people get hurt in those places.
Hurt in the gambling casino? Let me tell you something. The only way I can possibly get hurt in a gambling casino is if there's an earthquake and a slot machine falls on my foot. And I'm insured for that. Mr. Soo, I want to thank you very, very much for being on my show. And I'm so glad that we met.
I don't think you realize it, Mr. Benny, but actually we met some time ago.
We did? When?
Remember in Japan about 4 years ago?
Oh, yes. That's the summer that I was in Tokyo. Hey, wait a minute. Don't tell me you're one of the guys that picketed me because I was diving for pearls.
It was at the Ginza Theater.
At the Ginza Theater?
I was
in
an
Tokyo?
MC, yeah.
You did an Ed Sullivan show in Tokyo. I was in the audience. That's right. I remember that.
You should remember. I'll never forget it. I remember that particular Sunday. We started the show as usual.
The Ed Surabachi Show.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our show. Tonight we have a really big show, especially for the children. We have Sumoto Takamura giving karate lessons. So parents, the next time you argue with your children, watch your throat. And for a really big finish, right here on our stage, Mount Fujiyama will erupt. Right here. So watch the molten lava in living color. Well, to get on with the show, we present the finalists of our talent contest. The winner receives 10,000 yen.
10,000 yen.
So on with the show. Let's see who wins all that money. Our first contestants, the Huraki Fellas. Let's have it. We'll be back in just a moment. But first...
This is hair that I saved when I was really 39. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the show. And I want to thank Miss Yamada and Mr. Soo for appearing on this program. And I come out here again, will you, kids? Come on.
Mr. Benny, is that story true that you being in a contest in Japan?
Yes, that's true. And we didn't win, of course. We didn't win the contest. And I felt pretty bad about it until I found out that 10,000 yen was only $16.
No, Mr. Benny. 10,000 yen is $28.
Oh, well, now I feel bad again. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Mr. Benny. But I'm disappointed that you and Mr. Soo could not agree on price for me, so I could go on another show for you. This makes me feel very bad.
Oh, well, listen, honey. This was all a gag. We were just playing a part, that's all. You're going to be on my show again.
That makes me very happy.
And you know what? I thought of a wonderful idea. You see, the next time when you sing a song, then I'll accompany you on my violin. You see?
Your violin. Now you make me feel bad again.
Well, we'll discuss this later. Goodbye, and thank you. So long. So long. Well, good night, folks, and I'll be seeing you soon.